We've been believing some absolutely wild stuff about basketball for years. I'm talking about narratives so deeply embedded in NBA culture that nobody even questions them anymore. But today, we're pulling back the curtain on 7 myths that have shaped how we talk about the league. And honestly, some of them might shock you. Stick around because by the end of this, your whole perspective on the NBA might shift. Myth 1. The 2020 Bubble Championship doesn't count. All right, let's start with the one that still gets people heated in the comments. The 2020 Lakers Championship, the Mickey Mouse ring. You know the narrative. No fans, no travel, no real championship vibes. It was at Disney World for crying out loud. Everyone was saying LeBron's ring didn't count because of the bubble conditions, right? Here's the thing though. The bubble didn't make it easier. It made it different, but not in the way people think. Look at what actually happened. Every single team faced identical circumstances. Same isolation, same mental toll, same lack of home court advantage. If anything, that leveled the playing field more than any other playoffs we've seen. You couldn't hide at home, recover normally, or lean on crowd energy. It was pure basketball skill stripped down to the essence. And here's what nobody talks about. The players themselves keep saying it was brutal. LeBron literally called it the most challenging thing he's done professionally. Giannis, he said it was the toughest championship to win. These aren't guys making excuses. They're players who've been through everything speaking on real mental strain that most of us can't even comprehend. The stats back it up too. The Lakers' defensive rating was 102.8. That's elite. Their efficiency numbers aligned with championship caliber play from any era. But you know what's wild? People were specifically targeting LeBron's ring. If the Heat or the Celtics had won that year, would we even be having this conversation? Probably not. That's the real myth here. It's not that the bubble championship was invalid. It's that bias against LeBron, and the Lakers made people need to invalidate it. Because deep down, everyone knew it was legitimate. But some fans couldn't accept how it happened. That's on us, not on the championship itself. The historical record shows this too. Remember the 1999 Spurs? Lockout, shortened season, chaos everywhere, same questions asked. Nobody's putting asterisks on those titles now, and they shouldn't have then either. Every era has disruptions. The bubble was just more visible. Myth 2. Modern NBA players don't play defense. This one kills me because you hear it constantly from retired legends. Nobody plays defense anymore. Charles Barkley says it. Shaq says it. Every retired star with a microphone seems to have this take, and fans just absorb it like gospel. But let's actually look at what's happening on court instead of just complaining about high scores. Yeah, scoring is up. Teams are averaging 114 points a game now versus around 100 in the 2000s. That's a fact. But here's what people miss. That's not because defense disappeared. That's because offense evolved, and defense had to evolve with it, which is actually harder. The 1990s, hand-checking was legal. You could physically impede ball handlers. The illegal defense rule prevented zone coverage, meaning teams had to play straight man-to-man. But here's the kicker. That actually helped isolation players like Jordan. Fewer options for defenders, easier one-on-one opportunities. Now, zones are legal. Switching is mandatory. You've got bigs covering guards across the floor. Think about modern star defenders like Rudy Gobert. Advanced metrics specifically designed for today's spacing-heavy game show, he's preventing shots at elite levels. Or look at championship teams. 22 of the last 25 champions ranked top 10 defensively. If nobody played defense, why would that pattern exist? The pace is faster. The three-point volume went from under 10 attempts a game in the 90s to 35 plus now. That means defenders are covering exponentially more ground. They're switching on every screen, navigating screens, contesting at distance. It's not easier. It's objectively harder. What happened is that rule changes, like banning hand-checking in 2004, opened up the game. That's not a flaw in defense. That's a choice the NBA made for entertainment. And you know what? Modern defenses adapted. Teams developed schemes like switching everything, overloading strong sides, and using data-driven rotations that would make 90s coaches' heads spin. The myth persists because retired players romanticize their era, and nostalgia is powerful. But the evidence doesn't support it. Every era thinks it's the peak. Ask a 1960s coach and he'd tell you defense was better then too. It's cyclical, and it's mostly about what you grew up watching feeling more authentic to you. Modern defense is sophisticated, athletic, and demands more versatility than ever before. The fact that you see high scores isn't a failure. It's a reflection of two elite sides fighting it out at unprecedented levels of both offensive and defensive sophistication. Number 3. Superstars get all the referee calls called the superstar whistle. This is the one that causes actual riots in comment sections. You see a highlight of Giannis getting a call on minimal contact, or you watch Shai Gilgeous-Alexander draw a foul that looks light, and you're convinced the refs are protecting their stars. But when researchers actually dug into NBA's last 2-minute reports, the publicly available data on every clutch call, things got messy.
Is get the same respect that everybody else in this league gets and get refereed the same way that everybody else in this league gets reffed. And enough is enough of it. And what you saw tonight was disgusting. It was a disgusting display of disrespect towards our guys and what we're trying to do. I'm extremely proud of the way they continue to compete. I'm disgusted by the way that game was officiated.
Turns out, the players getting the most calls were just the ones creating the most contact opportunities. Wild, right? But it's not completely clean either. Some specific players, usually all-stars like Jason Tatum and Chris Paul, showed consistent benefits beyond what their play style would explain. That's real. So it's not a myth that any bias exists. It's a myth that it's universal or the primary factor. What's actually happening is way more nuanced. Some of it's play style, some of it's reputation, some of it might be psychological. Refs might subconsciously hesitate before calling offensive fouls on megastars in crucial moments. That's human nature, not necessarily conspiracy. The interesting part? Players like LeBron actually rank lower in free throw advantages among superstars. Nikola Jokic gets fewer calls despite his dominance. Meanwhile, aggressive drivers who sell contact effectively get rewarded. Is that bias or basketball IQ? Depends on your perspective. The myth isn't that bias doesn't exist. It's that bias is the only factor determining foul calls. When you actually examine the evidence, it's one variable among many, and sometimes not even the biggest one. The real story is way more interesting than refs protect their stars. It's that basketball is complicated. Humans make split-second decisions imperfectly, and sometimes those decisions correlate with what we expect, while sometimes they don't. Number 4, Michael Jordan's era was tougher. Every GOAT debate comes down to this eventually. Jordan played in a tougher era. Hand-checking, physical defense, hard fouls, the bad boy Pistons. The narrative is so strong that people just accept it without thinking critically about what tougher even means. Here's what we know for a fact. The 1990s had more permissible physicality. You could hand-check. Flagrant fouls went uncalled. The Jordan rules were real. The Pistons literally designed a defensive scheme around beating up on him. That part's not exaggerated. But here's what people forget. That physical nature actually helped dominant ISO players like Jordan in certain ways. The illegal defense rule meant you couldn't set up zone coverage. Teams had to play man-to-man, which created one-on-one windows for superstars to exploit. And despite the physicality, Jordan's era had a slower pace, around 93 possessions per game versus nearly 100 today. Fewer possessions meant fewer overall opportunities, more set defenses. Compare that to now. Zones are legal, switching is standard, defensive versatility is mandatory. A big has to guard a guard in space across the three-point line. You're covering exponentially more ground. The pace is relentless. The conditioning demands are different, not necessarily harder, but different. Was the 1990s tougher in terms of raw physicality? Absolutely. You could get away with hits that would be flagrants today. But was it harder strategically? Not really. Modern defenses have to think more, adapt more, handle complexity that would confuse 90s schemes entirely. Here's what's really wild. True shooting percentage, a modern efficiency metric, was actually higher in the 1990s than in the early 2000s. Jordan's era wasn't producing lower scores because of elite defense. It was producing lower scores because of slower pace and limited spacing. The myth persists because the 1990s felt grittier, tougher, more physical. And yeah, maybe it was in that specific way. But conflating physical toughness with overall difficulty is where people get tripped up. You can't just say one era was tougher when the challenges were fundamentally different. It's apples and oranges. Every era thinks it's the hardest. Ask a 1980s player and they'll tell you the 80s was peak physicality. Ask someone from now and they'll talk about the athletic level and schematic sophistication. They're both right about different things. The myth isn't that the 90s was easier. It's that it was definitely harder, and that's the standard we should measure everything by. That's where the thinking breaks down. Number 5. Michael Jordan's hang time defied gravity. This one's just pure science meeting sports mythology, and it's honestly kind of beautiful in how it shows what our brains do with visual information. Michael Jordan's hang time is legendary, around 0.92 seconds. That's legitimately impressive. Average people hover around 0.53 seconds. So yeah, there's a real difference. The thing is, though, he wasn't defying gravity. Nobody ever has and nobody ever will unless we figured out some physics we don't know about. Here's the actual science. Hang time is determined by initial upward velocity and gravity. The formula is time equals 2 times velocity divided by gravity. That's it. It's not controversial. It's not up for debate. It's physics. Jordan's vertical leap of 48 inches gave him enough velocity to achieve that 0.92-second hang time. Extraordinary? Yes. Gravity-defying? Absolutely not. What actually made Jordan's dunks feel like he was floating was biomechanics and illusion. When you reach the peak of a jump, you spend a disproportionate amount of your total airtime at the top. Like 50% of your hang time happens in the top 25% of your height. It's not that you're staying up longer, it's that you're spending more relative time at your highest point, creating this plateau effect that our brains interpret as floating. Jordan also manipulated his body positioning mid-air, arching his back, spreading his limbs, adjusting his center of mass dynamically. You're focusing on his head or hands, which can trace a flatter path than the actual center of mass thanks to limb positioning. His body's center of mass still followed a parabolic trajectory exactly as physics dictates, but visually, it looked different. Running jumps amplified this too. He'd take off from a higher position and land lower, extending the perceived duration compared to standing jumps. So, is this myth a problem? Not really. Number 6. Michael Jordan won it all alone. This is the one that gets closest to genuine distortion of reality, especially in GOAT debates. The narrative goes something like, Jordan was so good that he carried garbage teams to championships on pure individual excellence. He didn't need help. He just willed wins into existence. But if you actually look at what happened before his first championship in 1991, that story falls apart pretty quick. Jordan didn't just walk into the NBA and dominate immediately. His first playoff appearance? First-round loss to Milwaukee. Second year? Sweep by Boston despite averaging 43.7 points. He was losing. A lot. The Bulls were bad. Like, legitimately struggling organizations with player addiction issues and organizational dysfunction. Then came the Detroit Pistons series, 1988, 1989, 1990. They beat Jordan 3 years straight in the playoffs using the Jordan rules, specifically designed defensive schemes built to physically neutralize him. The man averaged over 29 points, and they still found ways to win. That's not a myth. That's documented basketball history. What changed? 2 things. Scottie Pippen actually developed into an all-around star, and Phil Jackson implemented the triangle offense. Suddenly, In 1991, they swept those same Pistons that had beaten them multiple times. Here's where it gets really telling. Jordan's playoff record without Pippen was 0-3 in series. Not games, series. 0 wins when his perfect teammate wasn't there. When Pippen averaged 20.8 points in the 1991 finals. That wasn't supporting cast, that was co-starring. Dennis Rodman's rebounding, Horace Grant's interior defense, John Paxson hitting game winners, these weren't just role players, they were essential components. What's wild is that this isn't controversial for other stars. We understand that LeBron needed Kyrie and Wade. We understand that Kobe needed Pau Gasol. But Jordan gets this mythic treatment where his rings are somehow pure individual achievement. The 1990s Bulls were stacked for their era, a generational talent, an elite two-way forward, Hall of Fame caliber defenders, and one of the greatest coaches ever. That's a super team. That's not a knock on Jordan. It's just reality. Great things happen when great people collaborate. The myth isn't that Jordan wasn't incredible. It's that he was so incredible, he transcended the need for quality teammates. That's false. What's actually true is more interesting. Watching a historically great player operate in an ideal system with complementary stars is exactly why those rings matter so much. Myth 7. LeBron isn't clutch. Here's one that's been absolutely destroying LeBron in GOAT debates for years. LeBron chokes in the clutch. He doesn't have that clutch gene. When it matters most, he disappears. You've heard it 1,000 times. Fans repeat it, commentators bring it up, and it just becomes accepted fact. But let's actually look at what the numbers say instead of relying on highlight compilations of his worst moments. LeBron has 8 career game-winning buzzer beaters, tied for second all-time behind Jordan's 9. That's 5 in the playoffs alone, which is the most ever recorded. Think about that for a second. We're talking about the most playoff buzzer beaters in NBA history. But here's where it gets crazy. In truly critical situations, playoff shots to take the lead in the final 30 seconds, LeBron is 11 for 23, which is 47.8%. Now compare that to combined stats from Kobe, Durant, Wade, Giannis, Curry, and Westbrook, 11 for 59, which is 18.6%. In the last 10 seconds, LeBron's 8 for 17, 47.1%, versus those 6 players combined at 6 for 39, 15.4%. His clutch field goal percentage in career key moments sits around 52%, which is higher than Jordan's and more than double Kobe's in comparable metrics. In finals clutch time, defined as the last 5 minutes with the score within 5, he's shooting 88.9% from the free throw line. Never cost his team a game due to a missed clutch free throw. Then there's the iconic moments. His chase-down block on Andre Iguodala in Game 7 of the 2016 Finals. His buzzer beaters against the Raptors and Pacers. These aren't lucky moments. They're patterns of excellence under pressure. So where does this myth come from? Partially from selective memory. People remember 2011 against Dallas because it was a finals loss. They remember a few scattered misses, but they conveniently forget that LeBron has been one of the most efficient closers in NBA history. There's also a stylistic element here. Early in his career, LeBron would sometimes facilitate in clutch moments rather than shoot, which people interpreted as hesitation. But that's just a different approach, making the right play, not necessarily the flashy one. The myth persists because it fits a narrative people want to believe. But the data overwhelmingly supports that LeBron is one of the greatest clutch performers we've ever seen. The numbers don't lie. So there you have it. 7 myths that shaped how we talk about basketball, but don't actually hold up when you dig into the evidence. The craziest part? Understanding what actually happened is more interesting than the myths themselves. That's always the case. Reality beats the narrative when you actually pay attention. Let me know which one surprised you most in the comments, and if you found this breakdown useful, smash that subscribe button because we break down sports narratives like this all the time. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.